Hey guys, how's it going? TJ here with Dead History, and welcome back to part 2 of our next Vice Presidential Series installment as we're taking a look at the 22nd Vice President of the United States, Levi P. Morton. Hope you enjoyed part 1 yesterday. Of course, taking a look at the early life and political career and political rise of Levi P. Morton, as well as some personal life details, of course. And now in part 2, we're going to take a look at the vice presidency, his legacy, his death, his gravesite, all of it, of course, in part 2 today. I am flying solo here for the audio, of course. Henry is not with me. So let's just jump right in and go into part 2 of our 22nd Vice President of the United States, Levi P. Morton. A strange victory. When James G. Blaine, declining in health, made it clear he would not run again for president in 1888, Tom Platt threw New York's support to Indiana Senator Benjamin Harrison, the grandson of former President William Henry Harrison. Blaine recommended Harrison as the best candidate and suggested for vice president former Representative William Walter Phelps of New Jersey. However, Platt's support of Morton helped the banker defeat Phelps by a margin of 5-1. The ticket of Harrison and Morton put together a strange victory in the presidential election. They lost the popular vote by 90,000 votes, but still managed to beat the incumbent president, Grover Cleveland, in the Electoral College 233-168. The journalist Arthur Wallace Dunn attributed the Republican success in 1888 to the combined political shrewdness of Republican National Committee Chairman and Pennsylvania Senator Matt Quay and New York party boss Tom Platt. As president, however, Benjamin Harrison would not allow Platt and Quay to dictate his cabinet and other federal appointments. Although principled, his stand against the spoilsmen alienated him from those most responsible for his election. A thoughtful man, Benjamin Harrison was cold in person, but articulate and compelling as a public speaker. By contrast, Vice President Morton was no public speaker, but a lovable personality who filled every position with grace, dignity, and ability. In an era of greed, corruption, and excess, Harrison and Morton both epitomized family life and puritanical religious values. Religious values. Harrison's cabinet was conservative and business-oriented, with the department store magnate John Wanamaker serving as Postmaster General. The political office seekers ridiculed the publicity received by Harrison's family, particularly his granddaughter known as Baby Ruth, namesake of the candy bar. They scoffed that the supposedly puritanical Morton owned Washington's Shoreham Hotel, which he named after his Vermont birthplace, where liquor was sold, and they belittled the attention given to Wanamaker's Sunday school teaching. As a spoilman's verse put it, the baby rules the White House, Levi runs the bar, Wanny runs the Sunday school, and damn it, here we are. Due to Mrs. Harrison's illness and death in 1892, Anna Morton often entertained on behalf of the administration at the Vice President's mansion on Scott Circle. Mrs. Morton became the leader of society in Washington, and there was never a more brilliant and popular leader than she, according to one account. It was her innate graciousness, her innate tact, and her kindness of heart which won her admiration and respect of all. Morton, whose only child by his first marriage had died in infancy, had 5 daughters by his second wife, and boasted a lively home. So, of course, as I like to do, just taking a look at the election that got Morton elected. Of course, we're talking about the United States presidential election of 1888. The Republican, of course, was Benjamin Harrison and his running mate LeviPMorton, going against the incumbent Democrat Grover Cleveland and his running mate Alan G. Thurman. As you know, Harrison and Morton lost the popular vote. Cleveland and Thurman won the popular vote, 48.6% to 47.8%. But Harrison and Morton won the Electoral College vote, 233 to 168. Harrison and Morton carried 20 states. Cleveland and Thurman carried 18 states. So there you go. That's the election that got Benjamin Harrison elected, and of course his vice president being LeviPMorton. So there you go. The probably seen some maps and some campaign posters and all that stuff that I usually like to show. So there you have it, guys. The election of 1888. The Businessman's Cabinet and the Millionaire's Club. Just as Harrison's cabinet was called the Businessman's Cabinet for its inclusion of Wanamaker and the Vermont marble baron Redfield Proctor, the Senate over which Vice President Morton presided was dubbed a Millionaire's Club. In the late 19th century, businessmen had steadily gained control over both the Republican and Democratic parties and used their political positions to advance their economic interests. Senators became identified as spokesmen for railroads, timber, mining, and other industries. As California Senator George Hearst, who had made his millions in mining, proclaimed, "The members of the Senate are the survivors of the fittest." It seemed appropriate, therefore, that the Senate's presiding officer should be one of the nation's most prominent bankers. President Benjamin Harrison considered the greatest failure of his administration to be its inability to pass the federal elections bill sponsored by Henry Cabot Lodge. Known as the Force Bill, it was intended to force the South to permit black men to vote and thereby protect their civil rights. After Republican losses in the congressional elections of 1890, the Senate had taken up the Lodge Bill again, only to encounter a Democratic filibuster by those who believed it would restore a Reconstruction-like Republican rule in the South. Harrison summoned Republican senators to the White House and urged them to do everything possible to pass the bill. But Western Silver Republicans believed that the nation's most pressing need was an inflated currency, inflated currency to cure economic ills. These Republicans joined Democrats in passing a resolution to take up a new currency measure in place of the elections bill. The elections bill reached the Senate floor only because of Vice President Morton's tie-breaking vote. But the bill immediately encountered another filibuster, and Morton did nothing to help Republican efforts to break it. Republican senators hoped to persuade Morton to vacate his chair in order to allow a more sympathetic member to preside. But Morton insisted on being present throughout the debate. Because the vice president had announced that he planned to preside as a neutral figure and not follow the dictates of the Republican caucus. He was accused of doing little to maintain party discipline and compared unfavorably to Speaker of the House Thomas Brackett Reed, who presided with an iron fist. Massachusetts Senator George F. Hoyer sneered at Morton as one of those vice presidents who asserted their authority with as little show of force as if they were presiding over a company of guests at their own table. Finally, on January 22nd of 1891, a resolution to replace the elections bill with another was passed 35-34, and the elections bill died. Unceremoniously dumped. As the Republican convention approached in 1892, Morton's supporters floated his name for the presidency, but he lacked the necessary delegate votes. Then Secretary of State Blaine resigned from Harrison's cabinet to become a candidate himself. The old guard bosses, notably Pennsylvania's Quay and New York's Platt, supported Blaine, but President Harrison held the majority of the delegates. Morton was unceremoniously dumped from this ticket in favor of another New Yorker, his supposed friend, Whitelaw Reid. President Harrison apparently had never cared much for his vice president or forgiven him for his neutrality over the force bill, and did not demand his renomination. At the same time, the Platt contingent at the convention determined that a Harrison ticket was doomed to defeat, and they had better plans for Morton. In 1894, Platt ran Morton for governor of New York, a race that he won handedly. Platt later memorialized Morton as the safest governor New York ever had. Business experience had taught him conservatism. He never was influenced by crazy theorists, but conducted his administration as he did his great private financial institutions. Senator Chauncey Depew similarly credited Morton as bringing to the governorship business ability which had made him one of the great merchants and foremost bankers. In 1896, Platt put the 72-year-old Governor Morton forward as New York's favorite son for the Republican presidential nomination to stop the nomination of Ohio Governor William McKinley, whose past flirtation with free silver worried the gold standard men of the East. Platt organized banquets and planted newspaper editorials that encouraged Morton to envision himself in the White House. But these efforts were routed by the campaign strategies of the brilliant businessman tactician Mark Hanna, who engineered McKinley's nomination. LeviPMorton retired from politics and returned to his banking career, organizing the Morton Trust Company. In 1909, when Morton was in his 80s, an offer came from J.P. Morgan to merge the Morton Bank into the Morgan Guarantee Trust Company. Morton deeply regretted that. As a result of the merger, the company bearing his name was retired from the business world. L.P. Morton died on his 96th birthday in 1920, already a long-forgotten name in both banking and politics. So there you have it, guys. LeviPMorton, 22nd Vice President of the United States, of course. Yeah. I mean, the man lived until he was 96 years old, and he died, as you just heard, on his 96th birthday, May 16th of 1920, to be exact. Long after his career in politics and his career in business and banking was long, long over with. So, pretty interesting stuff. So let me read you some more things about Levi P. Morton before, of course, we get into the, some of the other stuff like his gravesite and some of the home sites and locations and that sort of thing. So here we go. So, of course, his vice presidency was from 1889 to 1893. We know at the 1888 Republican National Convention, Republicans nominated Benjamin Harrison for president. For vice president, the delegates considered Levi P. Morton, William Walter Phelps, William O'Connell Bradley, and several other candidates. Morton obviously won the nomination. In the general election, of course, Harrison and Morton lost the popular vote to the Democratic candidates, but they won the electoral vote. Harrison's wife, when he was president, Caroline, she was frequently ill during his administration, and she died in 1892. And as Second Lady of the United States, Morton's wife, Anna, frequently served as Harrison's hostess and performed the duties of the First Lady. As Vice President, Levi P. Morton presided over the U.S. Senate. He was not close to Harrison personally, and Harrison did not often consult with him on political matters. A major Harrison initiative was the Lodge Bill, which would permit the use of federal force to ensure the voting rights of male African Americans in the former Confederacy. Southern Democrats conducted a filibuster, believing the bill would restore Reconstruction era-like Republican rule. Republicans from the western states who supported free silver believed the most pressing issue was the need for an inflated currency to stimulate the economy. As a result, the free silver Republicans joined Democrats in opposing consideration of the Lodge Bill. The Lodge Bill reached the Senate floor when a tie enabled Morton to cast the deciding vote in favor of consideration. Southern Democrats filibustered again, and Morton refused to aid Republican senators in ending it. Republicans in the Senate then attempted to persuade Morton to allow a Republican senator to preside, but Morton insisted on remaining in the chair. On January 26th of 1891, a resolution to replace consideration of the Lodge Bill with a bill on a different subject passed by a vote of 35 to 34, and the Lodge Bill died. Harrison blamed Morton for the Lodge Bill's failure. At the 1892 Republican National Convention, Harrison was nominated for re-election, but delegates replaced Morton with Whitelaw Reid. Harrison and Reid went on to lose the 1892 election to Democratic nominees Grover Cleveland and Adlai E. Stevenson. So then, of course, he was governor of New York. In 1894, Levi P. Morton was elected governor of New York, defeating Democratic nominee David B. Hill and several minor party candidates. He served one 2-year term for January of 1895 to December of 1896. One initiative in which Morton was involved as governor was the consolidation of several New York City area municipalities as the City of Greater New York, which took effect on January 1st of 1898. Another Morton priority was civil service reform. Morton pursued a moderate course on the issue, but remained firm in his support, which placed him in opposition to political party bosses who favored the spoils system. As a result, in 1896, the Republican Party nominated Frank S. Black, who was perceived as closer to the party bosses than Morton. Morton was a leading contender for the Republican presidential nomination in 1896, but the delegates chose William McKinley. Morton was then considered for the vice presidential nomination, but McKinley's campaign manager, Mark Hanna, was opposed, and the nomination went to Garrett Hobart. After he completed his term as governor, Levi P. Morton returned to his business career and management of his investments. Later in life, in 1890, Morton became one of the first members of the District of Columbia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. He was also a member of the General Society of Colonial Wars. In retirement, he served as president of the Metropolitan Club. He was preceded in that office by J. Pierpont Morgan and succeeded by Frank Knight Sturgis. He was also a member of the Union League Club of New York and served as president of the New York Zoological Society from 1897 to 1909. Morton became ill during the winter of 1919 into 1920. A cold developed into bronchitis, and he eventually contracted pneumonia, which proved fatal. He died in Rhinebeck, New York on May 16th of 1920, his 96th birthday. After a memorial service at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, he was interred at Rhinebeck Cemetery. At age 96, Morton was the longest living vice president until John Nance Garner, who died at age 98, surpassed him in 1964. So there you have all that. There is a few other things I do want to just touch on real quick. In 1881, Morton received the honorary degree of LL.D. from Dartmouth College. In 1882, Middlebury College presented him with an honorary LL.D. As an honorary alumnus, Morton frequently attended Dartmouth alumni gatherings in New York. A little bit about his legacy. The Mortons lived at the Ellerslie and Estate near Rhinecliff, New York. The manor home no longer exists, but several outbuildings survive as a local historical site. Anna L. and Levi Morton erected the Morton Memorial Library in Rhinecliff in memory of their daughter, Lena. It was dedicated in 1908 and is listed on the National and State Registers of Historic Places. The village of Morton Grove, Illinois, a Chicago suburb founded along the path of the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad, was named for Morton. He received the honor after he provided the financing necessary for the railway to expand its operations into Michigan and Wisconsin beginning in the 1870s. Levi P. Morton spent his summers in Newport, Rhode Island at a Bellevue Avenue mansion called Fairlawn. The home is now owned by Salve Regina University and houses the Pell Center of International Relations and Public Policy. Morton also left another Newport property to the city for use as a park. Located at the corner of Coggeshall and Morton Avenues, formerly Brenton Road, the site was named Morton Park in Morton's honor. In 1885, Morton purchased a home and land in Hanover, New Hampshire, which he donated to Dartmouth College. The college used the home until 1900, when it was torn down to make way for the school's Webster Hall. Morton also endowed the Daniel O. Morton Scholarship at Dartmouth. In addition, he endowed scholarships at Middlebury College, one in honor of Daniel Morton and another in honor of Levi Parsons. Morton also owned a summer retreat on Eagle Island on Upper Saranac Lake in the Adirondack Park. The home's design, created by architect William L. Coulter, was done in the Great Camp style. The Morton family later sold the property to banker Henry Graves. In 1938, Graves donated the site to the Girl Scouts, who operated a summer camp there for 70 years. A likeness of Morton is included in the United States Senate Vice Presidential Bus collection at the U.S. Capitol. The Morton bus was sculpted by Francis Edwin Elwell and was placed on display in 1891. A portrait of Morton is included in the New York State Hall of Governors. The painting was created by Albany, New York artist George Hughes in 1896 and was presented to the state in 1900. So there you go, guys. A bit about Levi P. Morton. So the house, the estate that the Ellerslie, the estate in Rhinecliff that no longer is there. What I'm going to show you now on the screen is some pictures of that old estate in Rhinecliff where Levi P. Morton lived. Now, These are not my pictures. These are all stock photos. The mansion house itself no longer stands. But there's not even a marker on the side of the road or anything near there that indicates, that the mansion was once there. So all of these photos that you're seeing are the LeviPMorton estate, which was Ellerslie in Rhinecliff, New York, kind of in upstate New York. That's where he lived, and that's also where he died and lived out the last, years of his life and such. So those are all the photos you're seeing now. I'm going to keep showing those for a few minutes because I also want to show a few other things that I'll speak about here. So as you're seeing those pictures of Ellerslie, the mansion home there up in Rhinecliff, then you're also going to see stock photos of the LeviPMorton home in New York City, right in Manhattan on 5th Avenue. I believe the address was 681 5th Avenue. LeviPMorton lived there. Today, there is a plaque against that building. It's no longer a home. It's a storefront on 5th Avenue in Manhattan. You're going to see pictures, old pictures that I'm showing you, stock photos, not mine, of course, of that home in New York City on 5th Avenue. So you're seeing the Ellerslie mansion. You're seeing the home on 5th Avenue in New York City that he lived at. Like I said, there is a plaque, a historical marker on that building in 5th Avenue. That still is there for sure. And actually, I'm going to show you a picture of that marker and plaque. This picture and marker is actually from Kurt Dion of Kurt's Historic Sites. Kurt has visited there, and he has seen the LeviPMorton home on 5th Avenue. So he's taken a picture of that plaque, and that's what you're seeing on your screen now, that plaque by Kurt. So yeah, that plaque that you're seeing on the screen, that's Kurt Dion's photo of kurtshistoric.sites.com. Then you're also going to see now this plaque that you're seeing is the plaque of LeviPMorton's Washington, D.C. home, which I believe the address, it was 1500 Rhode Island Avenue in the Logan Circle neighborhood of Washington, D.C. So I believe that's the home that LeviPMorton lived at in Washington. There is a plaque against that home. So that plaque picture you're seeing now is also courtesy of Kurt Dion of Kurt's Historic Sites, who was very gracious and kind to share those photos with us. He has visited the home in New York City and the home in Washington, D.C., so he shared those photos with us. So that's what those two plaque photos were. Now you're seeing other photos, stock photos, not mine, not Kurt's, stock photos of the LeviPMorton home down there in Washington, D.C. So that's what you're seeing on your screen now. So, bunch of homes. You got the Ellerslie estate up there in Rhinecliff, New York. You have the 5th Avenue home in New York City. And you have the Washington, D.C. home, of course, in Washington, D.C. All homes of LeviPMorton, our 22nd vice president, I should say, of the United States. And, of course, guys, last but not least, taking a look at the gravesite of our 22nd Vice President, LeviPMorton. And, hey, look who I found!
Hello.
Hey, it's Henry! How you doing, Henry?
I'm good.
All right, so LeviPMorton, his gravesite is in Rhinebeck Cemetery in Rhinebeck, New York. And, Henry, how old was LeviPMorton when he died? Do you remember from our opening?
95?
Oh, you were close. 96. Very close. Good job, though, dude. And whose vice president was he? Do you remember that?
Nah.
You don't remember?
Nope.
Really? So think about it. He was the president after Grover Cleveland, in between Grover Cleveland's first and second term.
Benjamin Franklin?
No, Benjamin Franklin was never president. Benjamin
Harrison.
There you go. You got it. I know, you're a little rusty. But okay, so here you go. As you've been seeing on the screen, These are pictures of my visit to Levi P. Morton's gravesite at the Rhinebeck Cemetery in Rhinebeck, New York. It's a nice, gravesite. It's like a family plot. It's kind of like private because, as you'll see, there's these little. It's almost like partitioned off with these little like bars. There's these stones, and they have these like little bars there that kind of partition the family plot off. But it's decent. It's pretty plain and basic, but it is nice. It's a smaller, not a huge cemetery. Decent sized cemetery, but definitely not what you might expect when you pull up to it. That's for sure. So. But there you go, Levi P. Morton's gravesite in Rhinebeck, New York. And there you have it, guys. That's a look at our 22nd Vice President of the United States. What's his name, Henry?
Levi P. Morton.
Levi P. Morton, that's right, L.P. Morton. Hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for bonus footage of course, all of my photos from my visit to Morton's gravesite. That'll be in bonus footage. And then, of course, stay tuned for next week as we take a look at the next Vice President, the 23rd Vice President of the United States, Adlai Stevenson. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for all the support. Thank you for all you do, the comments and questions, the subscribes, everything. Right, Henry?
Yes.
Thank you for everything you guys do. And stay tuned for not only bonus footage, but, of course, for next week, our next Vice Presidential Series installment. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.